I was searching for Grammy's ring when I first saw him. Grammy had given it to me before she passed, and losing that ring felt like losing her all over again. Mom had once again forgotten to pay the electric bill, and without the ring, I felt exposed, like something was missing. I'll be honest, growing up, our house was always dark. I did get used to it after a while. With no money for electricity, Mom and I spent most nights in the flicker of candles. When she'd pass out after drinking too much, my brother and I were left to figure things out on our own. That ring from Grammy was the only thing that made me feel safe. I knew I had it on when I was out in the yard, playing among the flowers after school. The thought of spending a night without it made my stomach twist. Before she passed away, Grandma was like our second parent. After school, we'd walk to her place, and she'd cook us dinner, let us watch TV, and just take care of us. But after she was gone, it was just Mom and me in that dark house. The sky was already dark when I ran outside, kneeling down in Mom's flower garden. Ross, my brother, sometimes locked me out if I stayed out too long. His fear came from the memories of our dad coming home late from work and throwing a fit if dinner wasn't ready. There's not much to say about him. He left us a year later, taking all Mom's savings, but the house was eerily quiet after that. Sometimes, I'd purposely sit in the yard at night. Our neighbors would watch TV at 8 p.m., and I'd watch the reflections in their window. I remember once catching an entire episode of some show about space. I had no clue what it was, but I was hooked. That night, though, it was too cold to sit outside. I had on Mom's coat over my pajamas, gripping my flashlight. I could see Ross's face through the window, lit up by the glow of Mom's phone, our only light. I motioned for him to leave the door open, but instead, he pressed his face to the glass and made silly faces. Ever since Dad left, Ross liked to claim he was the man of the house, repeating Dad's old sayings. When we did have electricity, which wasn't often, Ross would demand that I microwave him frozen meals, since he was the man now that Dad was gone. I wasn't expecting him to leave the door unlocked, meaning another night of climbing up the drain pipe to crawl through my bedroom window. But all I could think about was Grammy's ring. Kneeling there among the flowers, I grabbed whatever I could find, rocks, pebbles, crushed flower buds, old beer cans. Suddenly, I heard a voice, and I almost fell over in surprise. "It's over here!" The voice came from a wilted rose, and for a moment, I wondered if I was seeing things. Bobby, a friend of mine from school, used to boast about how his dad ate mushrooms and thought he could fly. That idea stuck with me, and Bobby and I spent an entire sleepover Googling mushrooms. I vaguely remembered Mom planting some when we were younger, but they were the edible kind, the kind she used in her winter soups. So, if I wasn't imagining things, if I wasn't high on mushroom spores, what exactly did I just hear? "Hello? Are you blind? I'm down here." All I could see was the flower bed. I shined my flashlight over the area and peered closely. And there, right in the middle of a crushed rosebush, was a glowing ball of light. I couldn't look away, mesmerized by a light I wasn't used to seeing. Turning my head quickly, I checked for Ross. His shadow was gone. Now, as I focused on the light, it began to change shape, turning into a tiny figure sitting on a leaf, legs swinging back and forth. The boy looked to be around 17 or 18, with wings made of glass sticking out of his back, a scowl on his face. I could hardly believe my eyes. Mom used to tell Ross and me stories about fairies when we were little. She used to say it was the fairies who took our toys, made us sneeze, and chased our dad away. Ross never believed in them, but I was always curious. I'd ask my friends if they had fairies in their yards, and they thought I was nuts. I remember Mom saying, "If you do a fairy a favor, they'll repay you by granting a wish." But she also warned, if you hurt a fairy, you'll pay for it, and so will your children, and your children's children. They'll hunt your bloodline to the end, and just their presence will drive grown-ups crazy. I wondered if she'd gotten that from a book. Before she started drinking, Mom used to tell us about how, when she was young, she helped a trapped fairy prince escape from a neighbor's bell jar. Maybe those fairies had been looking out for her, after all. The one in front of me was still scowling, but his expression softened as he spoke. "Hi," he whispered, tilting his head. He looked maybe 17 or 18. I had no idea how that translated in fairy years. In all the books and shows I'd seen, mostly stuff like Barbie, Fairytopia, I thought fairies always wore dresses. But this one was wearing pieces of old human clothes, a checkered shirt wrapped around his torso, denim strips for pants, and a bag slung over his chest. I leaned in closer and noticed a clothes tag sticking out from his back. It looked like he was wearing one of my dad's old shirts. The satchel, or at least the material holding it together, looked suspiciously like one of Mom's bags. I still don't know how to explain it, but there, sitting in my mother's flower garden, was a real fairy. He flashed a wry smile. Unlike the boys at school who liked to tease me about the holes in my shoes and my lack of a gym uniform, his smile was kind. "Here's your shiny thing," he said, shaking his curls. My Grammy's ring sat nestled in his hair like a crown. "Could you maybe take it off my head?" He stood up, arms outstretched to help him balance. Slowly, I reached forward and pulled Grammy's ring from his curls. As I did, I saw his real crown, a beautiful mess of flowers, vines, and tiny mushrooms. He took a step back, quickly hiding behind the shadow of a rose. "I'm not supposed to talk to you," he muttered, shifting nervously. "I didn't tell my dad I was here, so I should probably head home before he gets mad." For a moment, I found myself wondering if trapping him in a bell jar and using him as a lantern would help me sleep. His glow was mesmerizing. It pulsed like it had a heartbeat, spreading out in delicate threads like spiderwebs along the transparent glass wings on his back. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. But the urge to touch his light was still there. I was dying to know if it felt cold as ice or maybe warm like sunlight. Mom once told me she'd only ever held a fairy once. I cautiously introduced myself, extending my palm toward him. It wasn't until I pulled my hand back that I realized I was shaking, quickly wiping my clammy fingers on my pajamas. His skin was like porcelain, glowing in an ethereal golden light, his wide green eyes blinking at me. "Jude," he said, his wings twitching slightly. He hopped onto my hand, wobbling as he threw out his arms to steady himself. "Prince Jude," he added, beaming with pride and pointing at his crown. Jude and I became fast friends, and he eventually introduced me to his family. His father, however, was always missing. I spent a lot of time in the yard, so it didn't take long for Ross to catch on. One day, he followed me, sneaking up on me while I was talking to Jude. At first, he thought I was just chatting with a butterfly. But Ross liked Jude immediately, holding out his hand for the fairy to land on. Especially after Jude offered to help us with our constant light problem. In exchange for knowing our full names, Jude agreed to light our way until we fell asleep. I was more than happy to share our names. After that, Jude became a regular guest, perching on top of the microwave with his legs dangling as he lit up the counter so we could fix dinner. Jude loved showing off, dancing across my broken phone screen and making it flicker on and off. Ross was wide-eyed. "Wait, so you can actually make stuff work?" Jude shrugged. "If there's enough of us, sure." One night, Ross accidentally sat on him. Jude squeaked in pain, buzzing around like an angry mosquito, his glow brightening and growing until the whole room lit up. It was blinding, like an overexposed photo, light spilling out into the dark hallway and casting its glow into the living room doorway. Ross apologized right away, and Jude forgave him instantly, then began telling us stories about his family and his world. He spoke of growing up as a reluctant prince, though he never wanted to be one. As the king's son, Jude was the rightful heir to the throne. Fairies don't like candy, and I was surprised to hear that. Growing up, Mom always whispered, "Leave a berry at the edge of the yard, and maybe he'll come visit you." I offered Jude a chunk of gummy worms, but he spat it out. Jude explained that his kind preferred a variety of foods, but they were carnivores. Then he showed me his teeth, long, sharp spikes, and I instantly wished he hadn't. I guess I was just a kid, thinking fairies were little people with butterfly wings. Mom's stories always painted them as creatures from a fairy tale, never mentioning teeth sharp enough to tear through my skin. Still, Jude was my friend. His teeth didn't scare me. At night, Jude would visit, sitting on my windowsill, his orange glow providing comfort in the darkness. Mom never tucked me in or said goodnight, so his light really made a difference. When I turned 10, I went on a school field trip to France for a week. I told Ross to look out for Jude, and Jude to keep an eye on my brother. I remember the trip wasn't as fun as I'd hoped. I spent the whole time missing Jude and his family, and my brother, who wasn't answering my texts or calls. I came down with food poisoning after eating some slimy clams. One girl puked all over her seat on the plane, and our teacher nearly had a meltdown. But it was my brother's silence that really twisted my gut. I texted him nearly 50 times over the course of 3 days, and not a single message was read. When I finally came home, I was relieved to see Jude perched on a daffodil. But he seemed quieter than usual. As a 10-year-old, I really hoped he'd missed me and would be excited to see me back. Jude didn't say much that night. I remember it being summer, so I spent the afternoon and evening with him, but he didn't speak much at all. Eventually, after I prodded him with a spoonful of honey, which, to him, was like a fairy's version of getting high, Jude opened up. He hopped onto my outstretched palm, his glow faint and flickering. "My friends are disappearing," he murmured, his voice barely audible. His glow intensified, but his face had lost all its color, dark circles visible beneath his eyes. He sighed deeply, curling up in my hand, like he was too tired to keep floating. I liked that he trusted me enough to let his guard down, to be vulnerable with me. Jude had once told me his father forbade him from talking to humans. The king called us parasites and evil monstrous things. "Dad thinks you're just a human," Jude sighed, rolling around in my palm, burying his face in his arms. I told him you're not. Humans are nice. I have 2 human friends, he added softly, and I could feel the weight of it in his words, the fact that his father didn't want him to see me anymore, to be my friend. "I'll be king in a month," Jude continued, his voice heavy with resignation. "So, Dad says I can't explore anymore." Jude didn't say goodbye. I think he couldn't bring himself to. Instead, he told me it was nice knowing a friendly human, and before I could say anything back, he leapt off my wrist and flew away, a single glowing dot fading into the trees. I wasn't going to let him down. I would find his missing friends. I set up honey traps, thinking they might be hiding somewhere nearby. I figured they'd run away from home. It seemed like the most logical explanation. I had this naive hope that finding them would bring Jude back, that my kindness would prove his father wrong, that humans weren't the monsters they were made out to be. I even made plans, determined to find his friends and bring them back to the kingdom. Ross had been quieter since I got back from France. He said he was doing homework in his room, but when I peeked in, he was curled up under his blankets, flashlight in hand. The beam illuminated his shadowy figure. When I asked what he was up to, he grunted, reading. So, I left him alone. But Jude's friends never showed. I gave up halfway through summer when it was clear Jude wasn't coming back. My efforts were pointless. It had been months since I'd last seen him. And when I wasn't searching for his missing friends, I spent most of my time with new friends. I didn't tell them about Jude, the fairies, or where I lived. I was ashamed of my neighborhood. I hated our broken gate, the unkempt lawn that had grown too tall, and how my mom refused to be a real parent. With these new friends, I could reinvent myself. I could be Frankie, the kid without the dad who'd left, or the alcoholic mother. I could be Frankie, the girl whose brother hadn't spoken to her in weeks. But when they were called inside for dinner, I had no choice but to go back home. With Jude, things were easier. With him, I could forget how I hadn't washed my hair in weeks because we couldn't afford shampoo, or how the other girls at school were pointing out lice in my hair. Jude made it easier to ignore all of that. Without him, and without my parents, my brother, and my grandma, I felt empty. I stepped inside my house, surprised by the unfamiliar flicker of light from the TV. Mom was passed out on the couch, but it looked like she'd been watching a game show. Dad's crystal lamp, which was usually off, was glowing brighter than usual. The intensity of the light forced me to shield my eyes. I opened the fridge, feeling comforted by the light, and grabbed a bottle of water. It was ice cold, which was a strange luxury. I was used to lukewarm drinks. Mom had finally paid the electricity bill. I couldn't describe the relief that flooded me. I had a hot shower, made myself a frozen meal, and could hear my brother in the other room, yelling at the TV screen during his video game. I poked my head in to ask him, "Did Mom pay the electricity bill?" Ross didn't take his eyes off the screen, slouched in his beanbag, as he muttered, obviously. I threw a stuffed animal at him, and, of course, he threw it back, aiming for my face. As I caught a glimpse of his blankets, I noticed a faint shimmer of light beneath them. "Is your flashlight broken?" I asked. Ross didn't even look at me. "I was using it for reading, but the stupid thing won't work right." "It's broken." I offered him mine, and for the first time in ages, my brother smiled at me. "Thanks," he said. I ran upstairs to grab Mom's laptop so I could do some homework. This was the first time in months we had electricity, and I was going to make the most of it. But when I entered my room, something felt off. The light from my bedside lamp was too bright. I'd wished for that light countless times during cold winter nights when nothing could warm me, not even my blankets. But now, the bulb, once so cold and dark, seemed almost painful, like it was stabbing me in the back. I rushed over to turn it off, but something made me freeze. Voices. Tiny, screeching sounds. Swallowing the bile rising in my throat, I crept closer, peering into the lamp. What I saw made my blood run cold. Tiny bodies, cruelly stuck to the burning bulb by duct tape, twisting and writhing in agony. Their skin was melting away, glowing hair singeing off, revealing the delicate white bones of tiny fairy skulls. Their screams, their desperate cries, sent me stumbling backward. My stomach churned as I fell to my knees. I'll never forget that image. It's burned into my mind, forever. I'll never forget their screams. The more they cried, the brighter the light burned, feeding off their pain, making the bulb scorch even hotter. I didn't think. I just acted. Tears streaming down my face, I reached out, burning my finger as I plucked Yuri, Jude's older brother, from the lamp. I had met Yuri once when he got tangled in my hair. I laughed so hard trying to pull him out of my ponytail that I nearly threw up. He was kind. Yuri was older, college-aged, and had stories from his time overseas that always made Jude laugh. He'd tease him like my brother teased me, pushing him off flower buds, messing up his hair. But now, Yuri wasn't moving. His head hung low, his wings charred, and I could see that half of his face had peeled away, leaving a skeletal grin. When I gently nudged him, panicking, his head lolled forward, lifeless. He was dead, and yet, despite everything, he still glowed faintly. "What are you doing?" Ross grabbed Yuri from my hands, crushing the fragile fairy between his fingers. I felt sick as golden light leaked through the spaces in his fist. Without a word, Ross shoved Yuri back into the lamp, tightening the duct tape that held him in place. I noticed Yuri's wings twitching, but he wasn't alive. Not really. He was hanging on by a thread. Ross turned to me, his eyes cold and filled with a kind of madness that terrified me. "You said you wanted light," he snapped, pointing to the lamp. "So, I got us light." I tried to protest, tried to pull Yuri out of the lamp, but Ross shoved me into the wall with a grunt. "If you touch them," he growled, "I will fucking kill you." I tried again, desperate to save Yuri, to save them all. But Ross wasn't having it. He snatched the fairy from my hands, shoved him into his pocket, and told me, "We have light. That's all that matters." He kept saying it like a mantra, over and over, but I could see the truth in his eyes. He was hurting them. "They're giving us light, Frankie." But they weren't supposed to give us light. They were supposed to be free. Eventually, Ross lost interest. After weeks of torturing fairies for light, he moved on to hanging out with his friends from school. It was like a game to him. And that's when I acted. I freed every single fairy I could find, one by one, nursing them back to health. 15 fairies survived out of 25. I can still remember the names of some of them: Lyra, who had been my brother's nightlight; Fora, stuck to the kitchen bulb; Jax and Svan, twins trapped inside Ross's bedside lamp. Yuri. I won't describe him. He deserved better than that. I buried him in the yard with the others, said a prayer, and hoped they could finally rest. The TV was still on when I slumped onto the couch next to my mother, who was passed out. The television buzzed, but something felt off. I was sure there should only be one fairy per electrical appliance. But when I checked the outlet, there were no fairies. I'd saved them all, and every time I freed one, the house grew darker. The electricity seemed to diminish, but the house still had power. I checked everything, the fridge, the oven, Ross's PS4. Above me, the kitchen light flickered on, then off. Weak, but it was there. Something wasn't right. I crept down to the basement where the generator was. I could hear it before I saw it, the frantic buzzing of wings, the sharp cries of pain. Jude. He was hooked up to the machine, his tiny body trapped among a mess of wires and flashing buttons. His glow had dimmed, almost gone, and one of his wings was torn to shreds. The other was barely hanging on. When I reached out to pull him free, the wires wouldn't release. Ross had forced him into the generator, using him like a battery. His eyes were glazed, flickering in and out of focus. I could hear his shallow, strained breaths, see the blood trickling from his nose. I untangled him as carefully as I could, but he didn't respond when I called his name. His wings were still, his body limp in my hands. I tried to clean the burns on his face with a sponge, but it was like he was slipping away in my hands, his body refusing to heal. I dropped him. I didn't know what else to do. His father was right. The fairies couldn't live in our world. Jude's light grew brighter, blinding, until it was too much. I gently laid him down in my mother's rose garden, but even that felt wrong. Burying him wasn't enough. I stayed there, sitting in the dirt for hours, trying to figure out what I could say to make it right, what I could do to honor his memory. But there was nothing. The guilt weighed heavy in my chest. That night, my mother came to her senses. She sat up, eyes wide, her lips trembling. "What did you do?" I couldn't answer her. She grabbed my shoulders, shaking me, her voice rising in a panic. "What did you do?" Her eyes were wild with fear, red and raw, like she already knew. I couldn't lie to her anymore. I admitted that Ross had killed a fairy, that I didn't know what to do. Mom didn't speak. She was in a trance, moving like she was controlled by something else. She stood up, grabbed a box of matches, and stormed outside. I tried to stop her, but she told me, "If I don't do this, you'll die." Mom set the flower bed on fire. She told me, "When you lose someone you love, death is the kindest way." Her voice broke, her eyes wild with terror. "That's not what they do," she cried. "They will hunt you. They will make you wish you were dead." She shook me, pulling me close. Her breath was icy against my ear. "Please, baby," she whispered. "Tell me you didn't give them your names." I couldn't answer her. I couldn't. "Frankie," she sobbed. "You didn't, right?" She moaned like an animal, her eyes rolling back. She started chanting in a language I didn't understand. "Please tell me you didn't give the fairies with teeth your names." I didn't answer. Later that night, the neighbor found her dancing barefoot through the burned flower bed, singing the same chant over and over. The police arrived, and my mother was arrested. My brother and I were taken by CPS and moved to a new state. I was placed with a different family, thankfully. Ross went to live with our aunt. I grew into my teenage years and had a normal life, for the most part. I lived with a new family, 2 moms, and a stepbrother and stepsister who were my age. That was until a few days ago. I was having breakfast when I got the call. Ross was dead. My aunt told me it was a brain aneurysm, but her voice was frantic, filled with something I couldn't place. She kept screaming down the phone, talking about holes. Holes in his brain that shouldn't have been there, she cried. "I found him in the yard, Frankie." His head, there was a hole in it, like something burrowed its way inside his brain. I made plans to attend the funeral, but I was numb for the next few days. Losing Ross felt like losing the last part of my childhood. That connection was gone, and nothing felt the same. Last night, my stepbrother Harry poked his head through my door. He looked at me, confused. Very funny, he rolled his eyes. "It's not even April Fool's yet." I must have looked lost, because he held up his tube of toothpaste. There was a hole in it. A gnawing, jagged hole that had eaten through the plastic. "Termites," I said flatly, not sure what else to say. This morning, I woke up to screams. My stepmom's shrill cries slammed into me like a physical force. I heard Harry's footsteps, pounding down the stairs, and then his scream. When I rushed downstairs, I found Harry face down in the front yard. There was a hole in the back of his head, like something had burrowed through his skull. I ran upstairs to grab my phone to call the cops, but something caught my eye. Sitting on the window ledge, swinging his legs and folding his arms, was Jude. He looked older. A crown sat atop his thick brown curls. His wings were still slightly charred, but he was alive. His eyes, those eyes, were not the same. I remembered his eyes being warm and curious, but now they were hollow, flickering with madness. Jude grinned wide, before spitting a chunk of fleshy pink onto the windowsill. He didn't speak, didn't offer any explanation. Instead, he shot me a two-fingered salute. Then, he flew away, a buzzing orange light in the sky. It felt like he was laughing. I don't know what to make of this. I know he's doing this for his brother. But I'm terrified he's going to kill me next. He killed Ross. He killed Harry. Does Jude even know I tried to save him? Is he punishing me? What should I do? Mom is in a psych ward. She burned all of her books, as if she thought they could help. I just need to know. How do I keep him away from me? Something is seriously wrong. I just got a call from my stepmom. Harry's okay. He's coming home right now. Mom thinks it's a miracle. She keeps telling me how excited Harry is to talk to me. She won't stop saying it. Harry keeps saying how excited he is to talk to you. He can't wait to see you. But how is he okay?